Thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Brody Carter. Today, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu warning America and the world in his speech to Congress that the threats from Iran and radical terrorism are a clash between barbarism and civilization, and between those who glorify death and those who sanctify life. We'll take a closer look at that message to the anti-Israel protesters in Washington, D.C. as well. President Biden addressing the nation about his decision to end his race for re-election. But some critics say he didn't tell the whole story. And also, what does the Secret Service need to do now that their director has resigned following the agency's failure to protect former President Trump from an assassination attempt? We'll hear from one expert who lays out how they need to get back on track. And before his speech to Congress, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu thanks a group of Israel's strongest supporters, evangelical Christians here in the United States. Those stories and more today on NewsWatch.
This is CBN NewsWatch.
We begin with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu making it clear that the radical terrorist threats from Iran, Hamas, and others now facing Israel are also threats to America and the civilized world. Netanyahu's forceful presentation coming in his fourth speech Wednesday to a joint session of Congress. As Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem, the Israeli leader addressed all of the major issues since October 7th.
From the outset, Netanyahu declared his view of what's at stake in the world today.
We meet today at a crossroads of history. Our world is in upheaval. In the Middle East, Iran's axis of terror confronts America, Israel, and our Arab friends. This is not a clash of civilizations. It's a clash between barbarism and civilization. It's a clash between those who glorify death and those who sanctify life.
He said the bond between the United States and Israel is indispensable for the times.
For the forces of civilization to triumph, America and Israel must stand together. Because when we stand together, something very simple happens. We win, they lose.
Netanyahu's visit to the U.S. marked his first overseas trip since October 7th, when Hamas terrorists slaughtered, raped, and murdered nearly 1,200 Israelis, including 39 Americans, and took nearly 250 hostages. In the gallery sat Noah Argamani, recently rescued by IDF Special Forces after 8 months in captivity.
On the morning of October 7th, the entire world saw Noah's look of desperation as she was violently abducted to Gaza on the back of a motorcycle.
Outside the capital, thousands of pro-Hamas protesters chanted "From the river to the sea" and called for an intifada. Some carried flags of the genocidal group ISIS. Others pulled down and burned American flags, while hoisting Palestinian flags in their place. Netanyahu had harsh words for the protesters.
When the tyrants of Tehran, who hang gays from cranes and murder women for not covering their hair, are praising, promoting, and funding you, you have officially become Iran's useful idiots.
Absent from the speech was Vice President Kamala Harris and dozens of other Democrats. In the audience, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib held a war criminal sign.
I really thought that was shameful. I think it suggests the kind of tactics that we've seen from the heavily anti-Semitic, anti-Israel boycott, divestiture, and sanction group, the so-called BDS people, who were very prominent amongst the protesters today.
Netanyahu said the Jews' right to the land comes from the Bible.
They call Israel a colonialist state? Don't they know that the land of Israel is where Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob prayed, where Isaiah and Jeremiah preached, and where David and Solomon ruled? For nearly 4,000 years, the land of Israel has been the homeland of the Jewish people. It's always been our home. It will always be our home.
Jeff Balaban of the ACLJ told CBN News it's this connection to the Bible that binds Jews and Christians together.
And we know that so many tens of millions of Christians stand with us and behind us. And I have to tell you, it's a miracle. It's a miracle. So for 2,000 years, we really didn't feel this. And now we do.
Netanyahu ended with a clarion call that a nuclear Iran threatens both the Jewish state and the United States.
When Israel acts to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons that could destroy Israel and threaten every American city, every city that you come from, we're not only protecting ourselves, we're protecting you. My friends, if you remember one thing from the speech, remember this: our enemies are your enemies. Our fight is your fight, and our victory will be your victory.
Netanyahu plans to meet with both President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, followed by a meeting Friday with former President Donald Trump. Brody?
Well, Chris, thank you for joining us from Jerusalem. It's just been a crazy, chaotic 24 hours. Talking about those protesters, the civil unrest taking shape in D.C., I do want to ask what the key demand is of those individuals, and why is that at the heart of the battle over Israel?
Well, Brody, their key demand, and you hear it over and over in many of these protests, Palestine shall be free from the river to the sea. Prime Minister Netanyahu said many of these would fail history and geography because they don't necessarily know the river or the sea, which is the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. What this does, in effect, is call for a genocide of the Jewish people and the end of the Jewish state, which is right in between the river and the sea. Netanyahu, that's why he made the connection of the Jewish people going back 4,000 years to Abraham, 3,000 years to David, and for Christians, 2,000 years back to Jesus. Historically, you can go back to 1917-18, the Balfour Declaration, which was incorporated in what's called the San Remo Resolution, which called for a homeland for the Jewish people, and that the British Empire would actually have a mandate to make that happen. And so whose land is it? It's a great documentary by Gordon Robertson, and I recommend people go to CBN.com to see that documentary, because there's never been a Palestinian state. And so all this, it really is a campaign to delegitimize the Jewish state and erase any connection to the land.
Well, I saw that documentary. It was very informative. And last night, plenty of one-liners coming from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. How did the Israeli Prime Minister defend the actions of the Israeli Defense Forces in his speech?
Well, one of the major parts of his speech was actually introducing several IDF soldiers, Jewish, Muslim, and Druze. That's a sect here in northern Israel. And I think he really did combat the charges of genocide that ever since the beginning of the war, even before the war, to show the IDF soldiers and what they've done. And he presented an example of Rafah, Rafah right there on the Egyptian-Gazan border. The U.S. and the world were telling Israel, don't go into Gaza because it would harm the civilians. Well, what happened is that the number of Hamas terrorists killed, as opposed to the number of civilians killed in Rafah, was about 1,203 terrorists to almost nearly zero. There might have been one person there killed because of shrapnel. And military historian, and Netanyahu cited him, he's up at West Point. He said what's happened in Gaza is the lowest civilian to combatant ratio, number of people killed, the lowest number in actually history. So I think he really wanted to cite and show the IDF soldiers to combat this charge of genocide inside Gaza.
Well, Benjamin Netanyahu kind of walking this political tightrope in the midst of a presidential election season. What's the risk of this, and also between Republicans who support Israel and Democrats who are divided over it?
Yeah, well, I think Netanyahu really doesn't want to step on any landmines right now. During his speech, he had praise for President Biden's support for Israel. And like we said in our report, he's going to be meeting with Biden and Harris later today. And in the speech, he also praised former President Donald Trump, and he praised the fact that he was not killed in that assassination attempt. And he'll be meeting with him on Friday. So really, he's walking this tightrope in the midst of major changes in political landscape, which President Joe Biden stepping out of the race, and now Kamala Harris is the presidential presumptive Democratic candidate. So he's trying not to stop any landmines, but also trying to reach out to both sides in light of what's coming up in November.
Well, he does have that big meeting with the president, as you just mentioned. What do you think they're going to be talking about at the White House today?
Well, Brody, one thing I think they're going to be talking about is the ceasefire deal. There's a possibility, there's been talk, but there's been talk for weeks now about the possibility of a ceasefire and the release of more of the hostages, both alive and some of the dead bodies. But Netanyahu, in the midst of this ceasefire talk, he wants to make sure that Israel can fulfill its war objectives. Hamas wants the war to end. They want the withdrawal of all IDF troops. But Netanyahu, that's the red line for Netanyahu. They'll be talking about the hostages and also Iran's role in the Middle East. This will be the first time at the White House since Netanyahu has met since he was elected in November 2022. And he's also met with congressional leaders. And one notable example, Senator Chuck Schumer, who had actually called for a new election and the replacement of Netanyahu.
Well, very quickly, running out of time here, about 30 seconds. Benjamin Netanyahu made mention to a possible Abraham alliance. What can we expect to come in a post-war Gaza?
Well, he wants it demilitarized, de-radicalized, and Israel to maintain control over all of Gaza. And when he talked about this Abraham alliance, he wants it to counter the threat of the Iranian threat and invite all the countries that are at peace with Israel to join this alliance. It seems to be an expansion of the Abraham Accords.
Chris Mitchell from Jerusalem, thank you, as always, for your insights, your expertise, and your knowledge. Stay safe out there. Coming up, President Biden speaking to the nation about his decision to end his race for re-election. But some critics say he didn't really address the reasons for why he dropped out. We'll have that story and more after this. Welcome back to CBN NewsWatch. President Biden addressed the nation last night about his decision to drop out of the presidential race, saying it's time to pass the torch to a new generation. But many argue he didn't tell the whole story about why he quit. Dale Hurd has that story.
It's been the honor of my life to serve as your president. But in the defense of democracy, which is at stake, I think it's more important than any title.
In an historic Oval Office address Wednesday night, President Joe Biden said that he dropped his re-election bid because there is a time and a place for new voices.
So I've decided the best way forward is to pass the torch to a new generation. That's the best way to unite our nation.
Some critics say he didn't give a full explanation of his reason for leaving the race, avoiding the hard truths about his health. CBN News chief political analyst David Brody called the speech one Biden never wanted to give, but said it was the president's own doing after not dropping out sooner.
He could have gotten out 6 months ago, 9 months ago. His staff, his family, others let him down. They tried to hide it from the American people. The debate exposed it all, and here we are.
Not since Lyndon Johnson in 1968 has a sitting president declined to seek re-election. And just like then, Democrats divided over the future of the party, and the best candidate to take the White House pressured the incumbent to drop out. Biden praised Vice President Kamala Harris, who's won enough delegate endorsements to clinch the nomination at the party's convention in August.
She's been an incredible partner to me and a leader for our country.
Harris saluted Biden.
He has extraordinary determination and profound compassion for the people of our country.
And Harris said on social media, "We are all deeply grateful for his service to our nation." Trump responded to Biden's speech on social media, saying it was barely understandable and so bad. And then he slammed his new rival on the campaign trail.
This November, the American people are going to tell her, "No thanks, Kamala, you've done a terrible job."
The Harris campaign called Trump's speech unhinged and weird. A new CNN poll shows Trump leading Harris 49 to 46% among registered voters nationwide, slightly better than Biden had been doing. Biden said for the remainder of his term he'll call for Supreme Court reform, part of which would include term limits on justices, and will work for a ceasefire and hostage return deal between Israel and Hamas. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Still ahead on NewsWatch, after the failure to protect former President Trump from an assassination attempt in Pennsylvania, the Secret Service is looking for new leadership. We'll hear from an expert on just what the agency needs to get on the right track after this. Now that Secret Service Kim Cheadle has resigned and an acting director has been appointed, what type of leadership is needed at this critical agency? On this week's edition of The Global Lane, firearms training expert Keith Hanson says the attempted assassination of Donald Trump was the result of multiple systemic failures. He says a permanent director needs to serve as an example and lead the way forward with better agent training.
What kind of replacement do we need for Cheadle? She was caught up in the whole DEI thing and didn't have a lot of experience with the Secret Service prior. I guess she worked for Pepsi prior to that.
Well, she was a Secret Service an agent. She was assigned to Joe Biden's detail. So she did have some Secret Service experience. Then she went to Pepsi and she was protecting the Cheetos. And then she went on to be director of the Secret Service. It should be somebody who's been in that organization for the majority of their career, who's had the opportunity to work in a variety of different capacities, maybe in an investigative sense, then maybe in an undercover sense, then maybe in a plainclothes executive protection sense. But somebody who knows that organization inside and out, that has a jacket that is filled with commendations and merit-based recognitions for the things that they've done within that organization. Leaders can't sit back and tell somebody. And in my perspective, a good leader is not somebody who says, you go do this and you go do that. A good leader is somebody who says, let me show you, let me guide you. I will lead the way. You will be a warrior forged in my image. That's what a leader in an organization like the Secret Service would be. And Kim Cheadle is not in a position to be able to do that. Thank God she had the presence of mind to resign, because completely, wholly, and totally inadequate in that role. And she's going to get somebody else killed if she were allowed to stay in that position for any length of time beyond right now.
How could a person seen with a gun on a roof 130 yards away from Trump be deemed a person of interest but not a threat to the former president?
I think you're asking the same question that a lot of people are asking, to be honest. Listen, these are multiple failures that have stacked up, one on top of another. And when you look at failures, and I'm using that in the plural, fail so miserably by accident. It's one of those that, when you look at it, this asks a lot of questions, and this is what tills that fertile ground where the conspiracy theories grow so rampantly. It is systemic failure across the board.
Well, and then when you're not forthcoming, Cheadle on Monday was evasive during that House hearing before she resigned Tuesday. She didn't answer the question posed by Congressman Jim Jordan, who wanted to know how many times the Secret Service denied Trump additional agent assets. So what difference, in your opinion, would another, say, 4 or 6 agents have made in this assassination attempt, especially when you have a crowd of more than 20,000 people in attendance?
Well, numbers don't mean anything. What matters is the quality of the training, the quality of the what we refer to as high fidelity simulation training. Listen, you can go through all of the range training that you want to, the drawing from your holster and getting a shot off on target, but in a contextual context, that's not relevant. The qualifications that most police officers or federal agents are required to do in order to meet the minimum administrative standards to carry a firearm are not contextually relevant to situations that an officer or an agent would find themselves if they were involved in an officer-involved shooting in a real-world engagement. So it's the quality of the training, the amount of high-fidelity simulation training that these officers or agents would go through, and then their core competencies. And listen, the bottom line is that there are 3 ways that people are going to react to an extremely stressful situation or a high cognitive load. And it's the classic fight, flight, or freeze situation. Some people are absolutely going to freeze. That's the deer in the headlights look, as their brain is trying to process information that's coming at them very rapidly. Other people, they're going to follow their instinct to survive. They're simply going to turn and run away, take whatever evasive action that they can. But then the true professionals are the ones that are going to fall back on their training because they've been there before. not in the literal sense, but in the figurative sense. They've trained for this. They understand what to do because they've been in situations that are very similar. And in an organization like the Secret Service, where especially those level agents are training and preparing to do one thing and one thing only, and that is to protect a high-value asset. So from that perspective, the training that they receive, that high-fidelity simulation training, should most closely replicate the types of situations or the likely scenarios that those agents or officers are going to find themselves in. And clearly, that is not the level of training that those individuals have been adequately exposed to.
Keith Hanson of Critical Dynamics, thanks for being with us. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And also on this week's episode of The Global Lane, is Jesus more popular than the Ayatollah? A Jesus revolution may be underway in Iran, and why the push for a digital dollar is slowing down here in the U.S. You can catch those stories on The Global Lane. It airs tonight on the CBN News Channel at 8 p.m. Eastern. You can also see it on the CBN News app or on YouTube. Well, coming up, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu thanking evangelical Christians for their support of Israel during his visit to Washington. We'll have that story for you when we come back. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met with a group of evangelical leaders in the nation's capital Tuesday, expressing his gratitude for their support.
I want to thank you for your incredible support at all times, and especially in these trying times. We have no better friends than you.
The Jewish News Syndicate reports Tony Perkins of the Family Research Council said, quote, "I think Israel and the Jewish people have no greater supporter, ally, and friend than evangelical Bible-believing Christians in this country," end quote. And Christians United for Israel's John Hagee said the Christians of America stand solidly with Israel. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of CBN News Watch. Remember, you can find more of our news programs on the CBN News channel at any time or online with cbnnews.com. Also, tell us what you think about the stories that you've seen by emailing newswatch@cbn.com, or you can talk to us on Facebook, Instagram, and X. We hope you'll join us next time. Have a great day.